My name's Sam Leinster. By training, I'm a general surgeon with a special interest in surgical oncology, but my major interest is in medical education. For the last 15 years, I was dean of a new medical school in the United Kingdom, the University of East Anglia. I've been a Christian for as long as I can remember. I was brought up in a Christian family and have always known and loved the Lord Jesus. As a teenager, I heard a call to give my life completely to Christ and went forward to acknowledge that from now on I was going to serve him and follow him. At the age of 17, I heard a call to devote my life to Christian service. In my mind, that meant that I was going to be a full-time Christian worker, but God had other plans. As a very young child, I became interested in being a doctor through reading books about life as a medical missionary, and my whole education was planned towards the idea of becoming a doctor. When I was at medical school, I was given the opportunity to study for an extra degree in biochemistry, and although there was no clear message from God that that was the right thing to do, it did seem that if I'd been given the offer, I should do it. So I took time out from medicine and did a biochemistry degree. Having graduated in biochemistry, I went back to complete my medical degree, and at that time began to feel that I should join the Royal Air Force as a doctor. There were many reasons for this. I was interested in aviation medicine, so the Royal Air Force seemed like an obvious place. And my father, who was a missionary to the forces, was talking to me about the need for Christian officers in the forces. For 6 months I thought about this and prayed about this and eventually decided that the only thing to do was to apply to the Royal Air Force, and then they would reject me and I could say that it wasn't God's will for me to do it. However, when I did apply, I went through the admissions process, and they sent me a letter which said, although they felt I wasn't medically fit to join the Air Force, they were going to offer me a place anyway. Coming up towards my medical finals, I decided I needed extra practice in surgery before I sat the exam, and did an elective period in a Royal Air Force hospital doing surgery. At the end of my attachment there, the surgeon, who as it turned out was a Christian, said to me, "Have you ever thought of doing surgery as a career?" I said no, it had never crossed my mind. And he said, "I think you should think about it. I think you're cut out to be a surgeon." So again I went into a period of thinking and praying about whether surgery was right, and applied to the Air Force surgical branch for training as a surgeon. I was accepted into surgical training, and after a spell was asked by my superiors if I would be prepared to teach a course in surgery for the nurses and paramedics in the hospital. As soon as I started teaching, I discovered that that was what I really liked to do, and decided then that I should leave the Air Force and go into a university department of surgery. That was easier said than done. I applied for 8 jobs without being offered an interview for any of them. And I sat down with my wife and we prayed about things, and I said, obviously I'm applying at too high a level. I need to apply for a more junior post. The following week in the British Medical Journal there was an advertisement offering a job in the academic department at the University of Wales in Cardiff. The advert said specifically that the post was for somebody with good clinical experience who wanted to be an academic but had no academic background. And that seemed to describe me, so I thought this was obviously God's leading. I applied for the job. I was offered an interview, but while I was driving down to the interview, I heard a voice that said to me, they're not going to offer you this job, they're going to offer you the lecturer's job, which is the more senior post. I thought this was wishful thinking and carried on. When I got to Cardiff, that's what actually happened. I had the interview, they came out, they said to me, we're not going to offer you this job, but the lecturer resigned this morning, would you be prepared to take his job? They did ask me if I needed time to think about it, but to me it was clear indication that this was where God wanted me to be. The idea that it was where God wanted me to be was strengthened when I arrived in the post, and my first day in the post, my predecessor, who was preparing to leave, came to me and gave me a leaflet saying, the professor thinks you might be interested in going to this meeting. It was an invitation to the Graduates Christian Fellowship. I said, well, yes, I'm very interested. How did you know? He said, well, the professor's a Christian and so am I, and we saw in your curriculum vitae that you were a member of Christian Medical Fellowship, so we thought this would be something that would interest you. At that time, my major interest in surgery was in surgical nutrition, and I agreed with the professor that this would be the area I would concentrate on. 3 months after I arrived in Cardiff, one of my colleagues went on sabbatical. The professor asked me if I would be prepared to cover his duties in the breast cancer unit until he came back. When the professor says to you, would you, it actually means you will. So I ended up working on the breast cancer unit. When I got there, it turned out that that was really what God had always meant me to be. And so I specialised in breast cancer and in other varieties of cancer. 4 years later, the Department of Surgery at the University of Liverpool was looking for a senior lecturer at consultant surgeon grade, specialising in breast cancer. And so I applied for the job and was given the post. Throughout this time, I was given responsibility for the education program for the undergraduate medical students, and developed an interest and an expertise in medical education. In Liverpool, I again ended up running the surgical part of the medical curriculum, and when Liverpool decided that it was time to renew and revise the curriculum, I was invited to join the committee, and in due course I was actually made chair of the committee. We, in 1996, introduced a completely new curriculum into Liverpool, a patient-centred, student-centred curriculum as opposed to the traditional curriculum. And I was invited to be Director of Medical Studies. I spent 10 years as Director of Medical Studies, and then the United Kingdom government, in its wisdom, decided it was going to create 2 new medical schools. I applied for the job as Dean of the medical schools. I applied for both medical schools because I wasn't sure which one I was supposed to go to, and ended up being offered the job at the University of East Anglia. This was a tremendous opportunity because I was able to start right from the beginning with no preconceptions as to what a medical course should be.